Erev Tov, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Thursday night Parashat Shavua class. Glad you can join us here tonight, listening live and studying with us. We welcome you again to hopefully what will be a great learning opportunity, or for those listening on the recording on our podcast, findingholiness.buzzsprout.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your daily podcasts. Don't forget to rate, review. It works. It helps. It helps spread the words of Torah that we say. So, if you haven't had a chance, go online and get that done. It really, really helps. This week's parasha is Parashat Shelah Lecha Anashim. Parashat Shelah Lecha is mainly known for what transpires at the beginning of the parasha, which is the infamous story of the 12 spies who go into Eretz Israel only to come back with a scathing report of the land. Of course, only 10 of those 12 come back with the negative report. Yoshua and Caleb come back with positive reports, each one because of different reasons. Yoshua was given a special bracha by Moshe. Caleb went to go pray by the Kivrei Avot, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, to ask for assistance. A lot is talked about those two individuals. But I want to focus today on the other 10 and what exactly went wrong over there. What took place? What was going through their mind that led them to give such a negative, false report of Eretz Israel, Eretz HaKodesh? Of course, because of this report, the Jewish people were forced to stay in the desert for an additional 40 years. They were meant to enter Eretz Yisrael right away, 40 years, and the Bechiyah Shel Chinam, the improper cry that took place as a result of that report, led to years and years of torment and turmoil on Tisha B'Av, since the report came on Tisha B'Av, and until today we wait for the days of Mashiach so that we don't have to mourn on this day of Tisha B'Av, but rather it be a celebratory day. But until then, it is Tisha B'Av is one of the worst days on the Jewish calendar, if not the worst, in terms of what has happened over history. And it all started from this story of the spies. By Daber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Hashem says to Moshe, saying, Shelach lecha anashim, send men for you. Veyaturu et eretz Kenan, and let them spy out the land of Canaan, asher ani noten livnei Israel, the land that I will give to Bnei Israel. Ish echad, one man from lemate avotav, one man from each tribe, tishlachu kol nasi bahem, everyone a leader among them. So here, the Baal HaTurim provides us with a remez that we're going to spend some time, an allusion, spend some time discussing and expounding on. He takes the words Shelach lecha anashim, send for yourself men, and he takes the last three letters of those three words. Shelach, the last letter is Het, lecha, the last letter is Chaf, and anashim, the last letter is Mem. If you rearrange them, it spells the word Chacham. Chacham indicating what? That every one of these 12 individuals were wise and righteous. That's what a Chacham is. The Chachamim deliberate at length over the significance of this allusion. Okay, what's the point? Okay, so the last letters, the Sofet Tevot, spell out Chacham. What does that do to me? How does that help us understand the story? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically allude to the character of the Miraglim with the word Chacham? So there is a lot of answers to this, and I want to share with you one based on a sefer in the Bechor Shor. There he addresses one of the statements, a famous statement by the Chachamim in the Gemara Masechet Tamid, a statement that you may have heard before. Ezeu Chacham haroe et hanolad, not to be confused with Ezeu Chacham halomed mikol adam. That one is found in Pirkei Avot. Who is wise? He who learns from everyone. But there's another statement in the Gemara that says, who is wise? A person who can foresee future consequences. Haroet hanolad, he sees the future. This is what the Bechor Shor writes, and I'd like to share it with you, with your permission. Ki bekol avera yesh avot vetoladot. In every sin that a person transgresses, There are avot, main father sins, and toladot, branches, children sins. He gives an example. Kegon avodah zara, like idolatry. Ha'av, the father of the sin, the main sin, is she'oved la'avodah zara mamash. He actually worships another god. Ve'atoldot, and the children or the offspring of that sin, hem gasut haruach, is arrogance, for example, and he quotes Masechet Sotah. Not only that, the Gemara Masechet Baba Kama, kol ha'ma'alim enav min hatzedakah ke'oved avodah zara. Whoever hides himself from giving charity, also it's like he worships idols. Kol ha'machalif bediburo ke'oved avodah zara. Anyone who doesn't remain true to his word, he switches his words. Ki'ilu oved avodah zara. Bekol sheken mi sheno mekayem tekiyat kaf or in tzedek. Oh, for sure, a person who doesn't say true, he swears falsely, doesn't keep his word. And he says, V'chen begilui arayot, the same thing when it comes to sexual immorality as well. Yesh toladot. Of course, the main sin is to be actually sexually immoral, but then there's toladot. For example, hamitkarev el anashim asurot bikritzat einayim urmuzim kadome. Someone who stares at women for pleasure, or a person who uses body language to hint, to attract women towards him. That is also a tolada of the main sin. As well, Masechet Sotah writes, Kol ha'ochel belo netilat yadayim kilu ba'al isha zona. Anybody who eats without washing his hands is as if he cohabited with a prostitute. And then he goes on to the third cardinal sin, that of murder, shefichut damim. Of course, the main sin of murder is to actually kill somebody. But then there's the toladot, there are the branches. Kol ha'malbin penei chavero barabim. Anybody who whitens his friend's face with embarrassment, kilu shofech damav, it's like he spilled his blood. Vechen bekol ha'averot, the same is with every other sin. Bekulan yesh avot v'toladot. There are the father sins, and there are the children, the offspring sins. Velazeh amru, and this is what the Chachamim said. Ezehu chacham, who is a chacham? Who is wise? De'ikar chokhmato shel adam lemalet nafsho misheol. Because the chacham will be wise enough to know what is all types of sins, to save himself, God forbid, from geinab. Umalet ita'i bechokhmato haroet hanolad. He sees the future. What can lead him, God forbid, to any one of transgressing any one of those averot. So the Bechor Shor is teaching us a very important lesson concerning the scheming, devious ways of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. The Yetzer does not necessarily try to persuade a person to commit a serious transgression right off the bat, because the person is going to resist that attempt. Yetzer Hara is not going to go force you, go kill that person. All of a sudden he becomes a murderer. He's the biggest, next day he becomes a murderer. Next day he's going to worship Avodah Zarah. It's unheard of. He knows he won't be successful. But what he will do, he devises a different game plan, which he'll attempt to try to get the person to perform the toladot, the branches of those severe transgressions. Anger, haughtiness, and all the other ones that we listed in just a few examples that we gave. Now, one avera leads to another avera. It's a domino effect. So the transgression of the toladot will eventually result in the transgression of the avot, of the fathers, the prototyped averot, which are far more serious. And that is what it means, Ezeu chacham haroet hanolad. Who is wise? The one who knows what the future repercussions will be. A wise man realizes what the Yetzer Hara intends to do, to trip him up. Initially with the smaller sins, with the ultimate goal of causing him to transgress, God forbid, the avot, the bigger sins. This is actually what the angel of Esav wished to do to Yaakov in his famous battle in Parashat Vayishlach, where Yaakov was fighting with this angel. The pasuk writes, "Vayivater Yaakov levado vayavek ish imo adalot hashachar." Yaakov was left alone, and a man was wrestling with him until the break of dawn. Vayar ki lo yachol lo. But the man, or the angel of Esav, realized that he couldn't defeat Yaakov. He was too strong. Vayiga bekaf yerecho. So what did he do? He struck the socket of his hip. the lower part of the body. So we know that this angel, being the angel of Esav, was really the Yetzirah, and he wanted to trap Yaakov's descendants in this net, but he realizes that he couldn't succeed in this to kill Yaakov in this assault face to face. Couldn't happen. He knows that the children of Yaakov are not going to just perform outright violations of the main avot and the transgressions of the main sins. So what did he do? He wanted to trip up the Jews with the toladot, the offspring, which is represented by the part of the body that reproduces, by the thigh area. So he hit that area. And of course, that plan was so that one sin would lead to another, so that they would, God forbid, eventually transgress the avot. So the Navi Yirmiyahu in his Sefer writes famously, when he's trying to get the Jewish people to do teshuvah, what does he say? Shuvu banim shovavim. Repent, wayward children. He's warning them not only to do teshuvah for the serious transgressions, but also for the offspring transgressions, the derivatives of the avot, which is the toladot. Because due to the sins of the smaller the toladot, they were induced to transgress the more serious avera, which is the concept of avera goreret avera. But there's good news to this, because just like there are derivatives regarding transgressions, there are also main mitzvot and as well derivatives with regards to the mitzvot. For example, the Gemara in Masechet Brachot tells us that a person who kol hamisameach chatan vekala, whoever rejoices or enhances the joy of a chatan and kala, it's keilu he brought a korban todah. It's like he brought the thanksgiving offering in the Bet HaMikdash, and it's like a person rebuilt the ruins of Yerushalayim. Unbelievable statement. Kol ha'osek betorat chatat keilu ikriv chatat. The Gemara Menachot says that anyone who learns the laws of Korban Chatat, it's like he brought a sinful offering. Kol ha'osek betorat asham, kilu ikriv asham. A person who studies the laws of a guilt offering, it's as if he brought a guilt offering. And we find statements like this by our rabbis over and over and over again. And the underlying principle is mitzvah goreret mitzvah. The performance of one mitzvah leads to the performance of another one. And by performing a mitzvah in its secondary form, the tolada, one will ultimately merit to fulfill the mitzvah in its primary form. And this really is what Ben Azai says in Masechet Avot, Perkei Avot, 4th chapter, where he says, Heve ratz le mitzvah kala kevahamura. Ben Azai encourages a person to pursue a minor mitzvah just as enthusiastically as he was pursuing a significant major mitzvah. Uboreach mina avera, and he should run away from sin. Shemitzvah goreret mitzvah ve'avera goreret avera. Because one mitzvah leads to the performance of another mitzvah, and one sin leads to another sin. Shesechar mitzvah mitzvah, uschar avera avera. And the reward for performing a mitzvah is you merit to perform another mitzvah, whereas the consequence of performing an avera is you will perform another avera. Now, the Mefarshim note several subtleties here in the language of the Mishnah. A few questions. Number one, how does a person distinguish between a minor mitzvah and a more significant mitzvah? We all know that the value and rewards of specific mitzvot are unknown to us. We don't really know what reward is involved in every mitzvah, except for the ones that the Torah actually tells us the reward. So I don't really know what is a mitzvah kala and which one is a chamura. What's considered a light mitzvah or a heavy one or a severe one? Second problem is the only reason and incentive for pursuing the fulfillment of a minor mitzvah because mitzvah goreg mitzvah? Because it's going to lead me to another mitzvah? What about the whole idea of it's just a mitzvah? I have to do it. It's a commandment. Every person is commanded to perform the mitzvot. Not just because it's going to lead me to do another mitzvah. And for that matter, the same way the other way around. Is the reason why I'm refraining from an avera is because if I do an avera, it's going to lead me to do another sin? But that's not it. We have to avoid all avirot at all costs, regardless of this principle. But based on what we said from the Bechor Shor, we can understand and appreciate what Ben Azai here is trying to teach us. He's warning us not to belittle and underestimate the consequences of the toladot, the derivative transgressions, such as arrogance, such as anger, such as not washing your hands, by thinking that they're not as dangerous as avodah zarah or gilui arayot or shefichut damim. Don't think that just because I embarrass my friend, okay, it's not like I murdered him. It's not the same thing. He cautions us not to underestimate the value of mitzvot as well, and falsely believe that they're not significant. So he emphasizes, heveras le mitzvah kala kevachamura, even the fulfillment of a minor mitzvah, or the tolada, the derivative of a mitzvah, an action that is considered as if one actually performed the main mitzvah, that should be aggressively pursued. That needs to be run after. And the same way, a person should steer away from the performance of even a minor transgression, just like one would do so for a major transgression. And what's the rationale for that? Simple. Mitzvah goreret mitzvah. The performance of one mitzvah leads to the performance of another one. The fulfillment of a derivative mitzvah, a tolada, an offspring, will allow one to fulfill the av, the prototype, the mitzvah itself. And the corresponding reasoning also applies to the averot. V'avera goreret avera. Falling prey to the transgression of a tolada, of a derivative avera, eventually leads you to the transgression of the primary one. And that's why he concludes, Shesechad mitzvah mitzvah uschad avera avera. As a result of performing the tolada, now you will merit to perform even the primary mitzvah. And if you perform the avera of the tolada, God forbid, you will even perform the prototype avera itself. This is why we have the custom to recite korbanot every single morning prior to Pesukei de Zimra. Especially we Sfaradim, we say it out loud. It's a big part of our tefillah. Ezeu mekoman shel zevachim, where we recite, we talk about all the various sacrifices. Korban chatat, korban olah, asham, todah, shelamim, so on and so forth. What do we say after the recitation of all these mitzvot, of all these mishnayot? What do we say? Yiratzon shetivnei bet hamidash b'mimena b'yameinu techekenu et toratach la'ason chavulav shalem amen selah. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we want you to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash so we could fulfill these mitzvot in actuality. Right now we don't have the ability to do so because we don't have Bet HaMikdash. I can't bring a korban chatat now. I can't bring korban olah or korban asham. I can't bring a guilt offering or a burnt offering. All I can do is read these mishnayot every morning. We know what the main offering is. The main mitzvah is to bring it in the Bet HaMikdash. I can't do it now. So all I could do is the tolada. So therefore, engaging in the study of the chatat and the olah is considered as if we actually brought those offerings. And therefore, the Torah study focuses on the toladot, the actual offspring of the mitzvah, so that one day we can bring the real mitzvah in the Bet HaMikdash. And that's what we ask Hashem at the end of the Korbanot section. The Jose Milublin, Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak, great Zechutio again Alenu, a great tzaddik from the city of Lublin. He once was quoted saying that he found many of the statements of the Chachamim very difficult and troublesome. And he was concerned about how the rabbis can say that anger and arrogance, haughtiness, are likened to actual idolatry. And what his question was, what possessed the Chachamim to regard these types of behavior so severely? And the answer is actually a great chidush. And again, we're going to connect this back to the Miraglim, where the spies that we started our shiur tonight with. He explained that the rabbi's intention by saying these statements was not to saddle us with a more severe punishment for negative behaviors, but in fact they wanted to do the opposite. With their tremendous wisdom and chokhmah, they intended to benefit us through increased rewards. How so? We are taught in the Gemara, Yashav velo avar avera, notnin lo sachar ke'oseh mitzvah. If a person had the opportunity to commit a sin, but he refrained, he sat there and he didn't do it. Yashav velo avar avera. What is his reward? Notnin lo sachar ke'oseh mitzvah. He's rewarded as if he actually performed the mitzvah. There's a question that comes up though. It's a beautiful statement, but there's a question that comes up. This applies very nicely to people who are out in the workforce that deal with a lot of maybe immoral individuals, unethical people, non-Jews who may not have a set of standards and laws to keep him, yashar, and behaving properly. People that are engaged in commerce and business, surrounded by opportunities in the outside to commit major infractions and sins, and by resisting the opportunities to transgress and do the averot, they are rewarded with doing a mitzvah. This happens a lot. Some guy is working and a person says under the table, listen, do this, I won't tell anybody. And you said, no, I can't. So you got there, it's like, Kilo, you did a mitzvah. But what about those who are not out there in the working force? What about the tzaddikim and the Torah scholars who spend their days within the walls of the Bet Knesset and the Bet Midrash? They're not surrounded by the same opportunities to transgress. They're not subject to the same tests of willpower. How are they going to be rewarded for avoiding the major transgressions? And that's why the Chachamim say statements such as Kol hakoes ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. Whoever gets angry is as if he worships avodah zarah. Kol sheyesh po gasut ruach. Whoever is haughty, ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. Because even a great tzaddik who is not exposed maybe to the major transgressions, where is he going to get the Yetzer Hara to bow down to an idol and sitting in a Bet Midrash? Where is he going to get a Yetzer Hara of Gilui Arayot if he's sitting and studying in the Bet Midrash? But he will have a Yetzer Hara for anger. He will have a Yetzer Hara for arrogance. And therefore, if he guards himself from anger and arrogance, then he is now ki'ilu performing a mitzvah. It's like he had the opportunity to worship an idol and he held back and he refrained. So he's rewarded as if he withstood even the more severe transgressions. Great chidush. So the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin says, Bera mezakeh abba, meaning a father is spared in the merit of the son. In other words, a person may not be faced with the opportunity to commit a father-like sin, whose avoidance would be considered and rewarded as if one actually performed a mitzvah. Maybe he won't be able to, but by means of avoiding the son, by means of avoiding the toladah, the derivative of that serious transgression, anger, haughtiness, and all the other examples we gave, which are equated to avodah zarah, idolatry, one can still reap the rewards for distancing himself from avodah zarah. Bara mezakeh, bera mezakeh abba. Distancing himself from the son, the toladah is considered as if he avoided the av. The Arizal, on this note, writes that every Jew in his life has to fulfill all the Torah's mitzvot, 613 mitzvot, on 3 levels. On thought, on speech, and in action, deed. Now this accomplishment, when he does so, he basically clothes himself with a spiritual garment that is he clothes his neshama with his garment that consists of 248 positive mitzvot, 365 negative mitzvot. And if a person fails to do this, then it necessitates a reincarnation, a gilgul of the neshama, a second and third time until the feat is complete. The truth is, not everybody can fulfill all 613 mitzvot in one lifetime, because if you're not a kohen, for example, you cannot fulfill the mitzvot that apply to the kehuna. So And a Kohen can't perform ones that apply to Israel. If you don't live in Eretz Israel, there are certain mitzvot that apply to the land of Israel. So we come back until we get them all done. So every Jew, clearly, has to strive to fulfill all Taryag mitzvot, no matter what situation there is, in order for the necessity of coming back. How does one fulfill the entirety of the mitzvot, even those that are unavailable to us, even those that are not present in present times? And one of the suggestions that the Chachamim write is to fulfill the extensions, the branches, the toladot, the offspring of these mitzvot, which is counted as if he fulfilled the mitzvah itself. Every mitzvah has extensions, guidelines, implications. There are many rationales and moral lessons to be gleaned from every single mitzvah that we have. So even mitzvot that are unavailable to us can be studied and scrutinized and observed on some secondary level to the best of one's ability. And as a reward, it's as if Kilu did it in the original form. Like we said about reading and studying the Korbanot every single morning. So we do that. It's like as if I fulfill the mitzvah of bringing the Korban. So there is a tremendous advantage of performing the toladot of the mitzvot, the offspring, because the performance of those commandments is as if one performed the actual mitzvah. And now it becomes unnecessary to reincarnate a second, third, and fourth time. That's what it means. Another explanation of Bera Mezake Abba. The son comes, and in the merit of the son comes and helps the father. If a person is able to perform the extensions of the mitzvot, the children, which are analogous to the offspring, he is credited with the actual parent of the mitzvah. And now he doesn't have to come back. Let's go back to the spies. The commentaries are very, very perplexed by many issues with these spies. These were very holy individuals, princes, to say the least, men of outstanding character, but they fell to such spiritual depths. They went so far to speak ill of Eretz Israel, to deny and contradict God's promises regarding the land. Hashem promised him Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, a land flowing with milk and honey. And to add insult to injury, they almost denied God's existence or cursed him. Lo nuchal la'alot el ha'am ki chazak hu mimenu. We cannot ascend to the people, for it is stronger than us. And Rashi says, don't read mimenu than us, but read it stronger than him. Kebiyachol klape mala amru, Rashi says. They were insinuating that the inhabitants of the land were stronger than God. So what happened here? What caused these noble Nesi'im, these princes of these 10 tribes, the 10 of the 12, to descend to such spiritual depths, to deny Hashem's power? The Zohar on this week's parasha explains that the Meraglim were aware that they would only maintain their lofty status in the desert. It's a famous answer. And that the moment they would enter Eretz Israel, they have to forfeit their status as princes. And hence they didn't want to enter Eretz Israel, and then they delivered a negative report apropos to the land. And therefore, the source of their downfall, according to the Zohar, was the influence, or the negative influence rather, of arrogance, of yuhra, of ga'ava. They were too proud to forego their elevated status for the sake of entering Eretz Israel. The Zera Kodesh, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, writes, Shelach lecha anashim veyaturu et Eretz Kenan asher ani noten livnei Israel. God says to Moshe, send for yourself men and let them spy out the land of Canaan that I will give to your children of Israel. Says the Zera Kodesh, why does it say V'yaturu et Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan? Obviously we know it's the land of Canaan. It's extra. Should have just says V'yaturu et haaretz, go and spy out the land. The word Canaan is superfluous. It's extra. So he answers unbelievably. He says that Canaan connotes submission. It means humility. Leachnia means to lower yourself. And that character trait of humility is what surpasses all other character traits. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, alav shalom, was known for that. V'aish Moshe anav meod mikol ha'adam. That trait was not only the quality of the greatest prophet, it was the character trait of the greatest land, Eretz Israel, the land that Hashem promised to us, because it's called Eretz Canaan. And by its nature, it instills humility and submission into its inhabitants, the people that live there. And therefore Moshe advised the spies, says Azera Kodesh, when you walk in there, take note of this incredible aspect of the land. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu warned Moshe from the onset, Shelach lecha anashim ve'yaturu et ha'aretz, that the spies, ve'yaturu et Eretz Canaan, that the spies need to go dafka to Eretz Canaan, to be lachnia, to lower themselves, to attain the attribute of humility that is found in the land. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically emphasize that trait of humility? According to the Zohar, it all makes sense. Because these individuals knew that when they walked into the land, when the whole nation was to enter Israel, they would lose their lofty status. No longer are they the boss. No longer are they going to be the people everyone's going to look up to. No longer are they the ones going to be signing at the bottom of the document. Their failure was due to their arrogance and pride. They were afraid to forfeit their status as princes in Eretz Israel. So God says, I'm going to cure the malady. I'm going to bring you the medicine. I'm going to teach you a way out. All you got to do is go into the land and focus on the humility aspect. Focus on the Canaan. And if you do so, you'll be fine. But they did not withstand the test because they were unwilling to part from their positions of honor. Kol adam sheyesh bo gasut haruach keilu oved avodat kochavim. Says the Gemara Masechet Sotah, any man who is arrogant is considered as if he worshipped idols. The negative attribute of arrogance is a derivative, is a tolada of avodah zarah, idol worship. Had the Meraglim rushed to overcome the negative attribute of arrogance, the tolada, the offspring of avodah zarah, it would have been considered as if they had overcome avodah zarah itself, in keeping with what we said before. But once the Meraglim succumbed to the negative attribute of arrogance, fearing the loss of their status as princes, then one avera goreret avera, one transgression led to another. By tripping them up with the tolada of avodah zarah, then it succeeded, the Yetzer Hara succeeded in having them transgress the av of avodah zarah itself, where they said, "Oh, the people over there, they can defeat God. What power does God have, anyways?" They descended to such depths to deny God's sovereignty by speaking ill of the land, suggesting that the inhabitants can defeat him. Let's go back to that allusion of the Baal HaTurim. Shelach lecha anashim. The last three letters of Shelach lecha anashim. Spell chacham, a wise person. Maybe HaKadosh Baruch Hu was conveying a message to the spies that they need to personify the wisdom of the Mishnah. Ezeu chacham haro'et hanolad. A wise man needs to be cognizant of the danger inherent in the derivatives of the transgressions. What is your action going to lead you down the line? The toladot. Not limit your focus on the av, on the prototype. The Yetzer Hara does not try to get you to be immoral with a woman right away, or to murder a person, or to worship idols. He knows he's not going to get you to do that. The Yetzer Hara tries to persuade a person to neglect the small things, the toldot. A wise man, a chacham, is able to recognize the consequences that are associated with such transgressions. He understands that that's what the Yetzer Hara wants him to do. It persuades a person to transgress the toldot so that eventually he will transgress the avot. Had the Meraglim heard that message, that they would have tried, they would have endeavored to overcome the negative influence of the arrogance that was contained within them, which was a derivative of Avodah Zarah. And therefore they would have avoided that chain reaction of Avodah, of Avera, Goreret Avera, and not become guilty of true Avodah Zarah in the form of denying Hashem's power and sovereignty. And this is what's implied in the flow of the Pasuk, after hinting to the Meraglim to act as a Chacham, Shelach Lecha Nashim, the last letters, Chacham, the final letters, cognizant of the dangers of the Toladah, the offspring of the Averot. Where does the Pasuk continue and say, Veyaturu et Eretz Kenan asher ani noten livnei Yisrael? The Pasuk tells them which Toladah, what is the branch, which offspring sin is the one that you have to worry about. The one that's going to draw you out of your arrogance. The land that will pull you away from your haughtiness and inject in you a natural submission, a natural humility that is inherent in the land of Canaan. Because Canaan is le'achnia. Unbelievable. And maybe now we can appreciate a little bit of the blessing Moshe Rabbeinu gave to Yehoshua. The Pasuk tells us, Vayikra Moshe leHoshea bin Nun Yehoshua. Moshe called Hoshea, that was his name. He called him Yehoshua. Rashi says famously, Hitpalel alav. Moshe prayed for Yehoshua. What did he pray? What was his tefillah? Ya Yoshiacha me'asat meraglim. May God save you from the plot of the spies. Says the Targum Yonatan. Look at the Chidush what the Targum Yonatan writes. Vekadeh chama Moshe advatnute. Kara Moshe leHoshua bin Nun Yehoshua. Only after recognizing the advatnute, the anava, only when Moshe Rabbeinu recognized the humility of Yehoshua, of Hosea, did he rename him Yehoshua. Ya Yoshiacha me'atzat meraglim. And then he was able to pray, may God save you from the plot of the spies. What is the connection between Yoshua's humility and Moshe's prayer? That God should spare him from the other spies' misguided ideas and intent. Upon realizing Yoshua's humility, his anava, Moshe understood, I didn't have to worry about Yoshua going in there. He already had the anava. He was not worried about losing his princely status when he walked in. So he named him Yehoshua, a prayer and assurance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would spare him from the plot of the Meraglim because he already had the inherent humility inside of him. Unbelievable. And who did Yehoshua end up becoming? The leader of Klal Yisrael. The leader of Klal Yisrael. Ya Yoshiacha me'asat meraglim. Unbelievable. Rabotai, this is just one inkling of many commentaries on this infamous story of the spies. It behooves us to learn from these lessons and understand why we're still here. And if there's any reason why we're still in Galut, is that we have to work on our midah of humility, our midah of anava. It is the most important character trait that a person can have. It is the foundation of our greatest tzaddikim, prophets, and as well what is deep down inherent in Eretz Yisrael. This is where, in order to get back to Eretz Yisrael, we need to get rid of anything that may combat or defeat, God forbid, the humility. We need to have the humility overpower. But more importantly, I would say equally as important, is our ability to be ro'et hanolad, our ability to be a chacham, not just a chacham in our wisdom and what we study, but a chacham that's ro'et hanolad, who sees the foreseeable future. You know what your consequences will lead to. Not only the sins that a person does that can, God forbid, lead him to do a more greater or a prototype transgression, but as well as the mitzvot that we do. A person should realize and understand that every small mitzvah that he does has tremendous consequences in the worlds, in the lofty levels above in Shamayim. And Bezrat Hashem, when a person understands that, realizes that, and knows that everything he's doing, he's thinking 10 steps ahead. What am I doing right now? How's it going to affect me 10 years from now? A person thinks that way. We do it in business. We do it with our families. We do it when we prepare in our schooling. Everything we're always thinking for the future. How am I going to invest in the future? I'm going to protect my family, so on and so forth. Why can't we do it with our Torah and mitzvot? This is the message. This is unfortunately the message that the Meraglim missed. And unfortunately, we are still here suffering from that transgression. But Bezrat Hashem, through our hard work and determination, we will be able to be metaken that, and will be zocheh, all of us, to live in Eretz Yisrael, the land of humility, the land filled with Torah and Kedusha, B'merabi Amenu, with the coming of Mashiach. Amen. Ken Yiratzon. Wishing you all a wonderful night ahead.